How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, yesterday I did a show that focused on runaways and basically what does troubled home mean? I mean, it's so subjective, but it seems like the news is running with this troubled home with an extreme bias that I feel is going against Celeste Rivas Hernandez's family. And it's just not enough facts to be going against the family right now. Right now they're mourning, and I feel that the narrative has shifted. I feel that, at one point everybody was supportive, and now they're just creating this shift, and there's just not enough facts to run with it. So again, you have a grieving family, and people are just defining troubled home. And the video I did yesterday was a way to kind of showcase that troubled home could truly be subjective, could be based on the perspective of a teenage girl, who for many reasons she could feel the home is troubled because maybe she didn't get her way. We don't really know the facts. And then she would tell people that she's running away. And people are like, oh, because she had a bad home. But yet she told everybody David. Like everybody knew about David. So I don't rather think she was running away from something, but rather running towards something. And then I also put into play the grooming, because an adult groomer on a teenage girl, they could make that girl think anything. So even if it wasn't a troubled home, I could put some stuff into her head to make her think it, and that will make her want to come to me because that's what groomers do. It's all about control. But that dialogue was really a dialogue that really relates like the mental well-being of an individual, and it pushes on how they view things. And there's a lot of things that could affect how a 13-year-old girl, or maybe when she started running away, what we're looking at, I think she connected it to him when she was around 11 or 12. And then sadly, they found her a day after her 15th birthday. So again, she's a very young girl, very impressionable. So with that said, I wanted to bring Denise on because a lot of these questions that I have to ask will fall into her areas of expertise. And since I've had her on before, you guys love her. So I'm going to take advantage of her love, the love that you guys have for her. And I'm going to put her on again because I have some questions that I feel she is the best to answer. So let me bring on Denise. Hey, Denise.
Hi.
Hey, so you're away, right? That doesn't look like your home.
No, I'm in a hotel room up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Ooh, the country. Is it the country out there?
It is. I'm going to be on a television show called PA Live tomorrow. So I'm excited about that.
All right. So now when that airs, if there's a link or something that you could send my way, I would love to also send that to the audience. I'm sure they would love to see you. And
that'd be great. You. Thank you.
No, and Denise, if you don't mind, introducing yourself and just, give us some updates. What do you got going on outside of what you just mentioned?
Well, I'm Denise Schoenwald. I'm a nationally licensed mental health counselor practicing in Sarasota, Florida. But today I'm coming to you from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. So other than PA Live, I've written some adult books, some children's books. I do a lot with law enforcement and Department of Corrections, just trying to help spread mental health awareness.
Right now, guys, I did a show on this yesterday, so I'm not going to reiterate certain things. This is really about Denise taking the lead on this episode. But I am going to I'm going to kind of give maybe a brief little summary here or there, but basically this is just, I got some questions I was hoping Denise could answer from her perspective. So again, we're talking about the Celeste Rivas and David Burke case, and there they are right there. Young girl taken away from us way too soon. So again, Celeste's story is more than headlines. At just 14, her life ended tragically when she was found in the trunk of a Tesla, a frunk, sorry. Before that, police were called to her home 11 times, many tied to her running away. And I added that because there was a recent update about the police gone to her home 11 times. And it was kind of like made it look like, without saying it, but implied that the context was, it was because it was a home where maybe she was being abused or whatnot. But it looks like the times they went to the home are really related to her running away, which makes sense. So the media labeled her background as the media labeled her background a troubled home. But what does that mean? Is it fact, perception, or the product of grooming and outside influence? So with Denise today, we'll explore not just the label, but the layers of what Celeste's case reveals about how and why teens run. Because in the end of the day, I think if you can learn something from a tragedy like this, then no one truly dies in vain. So my first question for you, Denise, is when you hear the phrase troubled home, how do you interpret it in your counseling work?
Well, certainly we know troubled can mean a lot of things. I think that we could all agree that there were problems in the home. That's what I would go. I would use the word problems, whether this was a rebellious teen or a family that was very dysfunctional. There wasn't any supervision. We don't really know, but for the police to go out 11 times, we know that there was some sort of problems within the home.
Yeah, and when I looked at the time frames, there's a good portion of those time frames that showcase that it looked like it was related to her running away, which could make sense, right? If someone you love run away, I'm sure the cops may go there a few times,
Yes.
just to kind of get stories straight, get updates, maybe follow up. And then I have for the next question, why is it risky for media to repeat that phrase without context or evidence?
Well, again, and I'm sure this investigation is ongoing, but we make a lot of assumptions, and then the media gets steered in the wrong direction, and they certainly don't want it to interfere with the investigation. The sad thing is, the police may have been out there 3 times. This is a young girl that all of a sudden has gone missing. So this is a major case, and I can see why the police were out there so many times.
Right, and also, and tell me if you would agree with this, Denise, if there's words put out there without any context that literally could be for subjective interpretation. If momentum starts going in the wrong direction, I mean, how hard is it now to, present facts in the whirlwind of something that people now believe is different?
Correct. It's hard to rein it back in once different words and verbiage starts to get out there, and then people have already got their minds made up, which is really it's a little bit too presumptuous, I think.
Yeah, and I think that was for me one of the biggest concerns I had here, because we should be being objective in our reporting, because you don't want to paint a narrative that one kind of runs you in the wrong direction to begin with, because it's just not strong enough to really be founded on. And then the second thing is to wind up creating a narrative that's now an obstacle.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, and then let me get a little more here, guys. I'm going through my notes. So the family conflict. So conflict is part of almost every household. Parents may see arguments about money, chores, or responsibilities as routines. Teens, however, may experience those same moments as overwhelming and even catastrophic. Celeste's ex-boyfriend described her home as unhappy, but that doesn't prove abuse, but it suggests tension. And I feel like the news is running with this.
Yes.
The key is how conflict is expressed and processed. To a teen, running away feels like an immediate escape from that storm. So first question here is, why do teens often perceive conflict as unbearable when adults may see it as normal family stress?
Well, children and animals are very sensitive to energy. And a child, an adolescent child, they don't have the cognition or the mental capacity to really understand what's going on, but it's very painful for them. As we get older, we sort of incorporate toxicity sometimes into our daily lives where it's routine. For children, not so much. And a lot of times they try to run from it.
Right. And then I just want to, so also, like, I think as a teen, and maybe you could help me out with this, some teens, especially at this age, when they're trying to figure out who they are, not that they mean to, but a lot of their thoughts could be very selfish in nature.
Yeah.
Maybe, I'm not, but I'm from my own experience. And I have a teen right now. So, I mean, you want to introduce empathy, but at this point, there are going to be very me-centered. Everything's going to be like they're always the center of a room, and people are always looking at them. So you got to figure if that's a perspective that they're entering the world in, then they're going to see the world in a very me fashion until it could be cultivated to more of like a higher, more greater perspective. But with that said, I mean, is there a chance that someone could be, as a kid, be, selfish and self-absorbed, that even if I tell you, hey, Celeste, you can't go to a concert, I could have all the good reasons in the world why I wouldn't want you to go, because you're too young to go on your own, whatever. But she could literally turn it around and say, this is ridiculous. You don't trust me. They could turn it to a point where the parents who are trying to protect them and in the process balance out some rules that you can slowly build some level of credibility with your child, but the child could easily turn it around and make the parent seem the bad person. And now with that as a perspective, conflict could turn into trouble when at the end of the day, the conflict was just a parent setting a boundary.
Yes. And the me that you just mentioned we call that being egocentric. As difficult as it is with teenagers to handle, it's developmentally, believe it or not, normal. Sigmund Freud called it too much id, me, my stuff, mine. When they become teenagers, it's really challenging because they can get into a lot of trouble. So this is when parenting needs to really sort of double down, if you will, to make sure that they're making, because we have executive function. So they don't make good decisions. They tend to do whatever they want when they want. And that's part of, the challenges of raising teenagers.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because now as a parent, and again, guys, this is just in trying to provide context to troubled homes. So we're not just attacking the parents, which could be just a normal condition at home. Yes. But that's when parents could be literally trying to do the right thing, but the way the child perceives it. But now the funny thing is, you still as a parent have to enforce the boundaries, but you still have to try to understand where your child is coming from, because you don't want to get into a point where I mentioned this in the show yesterday, where you're calling your child out and, you're lying. That's wrong. It's like, okay, well, I'm concerned about why you feel that way. Can you tell me why you feel that way? Because even if the child is wrong, it still doesn't change how they feel about, let's say, a rule that you're trying to, or a no that you just gave them.
Correct. And if you have too much control, that even makes it worse. So that'll even give them more incentive to leave or do whatever they want to do. So although it's challenging because you seem to have the same conversations over and over, it's really important that you understand how they feel. Compromise can be good, but in some situations where it's dangerous, then you really got to sort of put the foot down, as they say.
Now, I did in the show yesterday where sometimes a child that's running away, I mean, yeah, you have the generalized troubled home. Again, I really think subjective and based on the perspective of who may not be getting what they want. It could be that way. I'm not saying, guys, that maybe it could be an abusive home. It's just not enough to say that. I don't want to attack a family that's in mourning and not really have the facts to do so. And I just don't see credible facts, especially after I did a show right before this about the timeline of a dismembered body, where it looks like the facts were not there, but this one place was running with it. And since they took the lead in the story, everybody's still going to them first. And they kind of set the narrative that most people have to, when they go to introduce the truth, you have to battle against, which is, it's extremely unfair when you're trying to give out true facts, but the momentum that's being carried is really a momentum that was built for views. I mean, literally for views or clicks. But the question I have here is, how can parents manage conflict in ways that don't push kids towards an escape?
Yeah, there's the $1 million question right there, because again, it takes a lot of consistency. It takes you have to have a lot of conversation, but it sounds like they had challenges with her as an adolescent. So whether she was rebellious and no matter what they said, she was going to do what she wanted, or there was truly, problems or difficulties within the home where she was just trying to escape. She certainly went right into the arms of somebody that was happy to have her in his life.
Yeah, and you want to know, I was watching another podcaster who I used to enjoy, but I got upset with something. It's kind of motivated me to do yesterday's show and reach out to you to help me out with this one. They generalize something by saying that basically teens only run away when one, there's either a mental health concern, or basically there's a abuse or some problems in the house. And I said that's not true. I said, trying to understand a teenage girl in such a absolute, either or. I wish life was that easy. I wish, sure. I wish I could just say either or, and that's all. No, there's a spectrum of things, and to not include that there are children from good homes that run away because they're following an infatuation. I went around my job the other day, And 9 times out of 10, when I asked people, they were like, "It's not always a bad home, Ganji. It's sometimes for the ones that they know that ran away. The girl came from a very loving home, but she ran away because she fell in love with an older guy that she knew that the parents would not allow her to be with." I mean, does that make sense? I mean, is the greater concern always going to be what they're running away from, or could it be a big concern of what they're running towards, or maybe a mixture of both?
Absolutely. And we have to remember teenagers don't have executive functioning. So they're not reasoning and thinking things through. Could be that sometimes it's drugs, could be a love interest. It could be, I don't know, they get enticed to do something different. I see a lot with human trafficking. They can a lot of times get lured in just because they have an addiction and that sort of gets offered to them.
Yeah. And let me ask you a question. If it's a young girl, and she's vulnerable, could a groomer make her think that the boundaries that the parents are setting, or just simple rules that comes with growing up before you get the full level of trust, could they make the child think that the parents are evil?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Not only evil, but I don't know how you put up with it. Come live with me. I'll give you a better life. And to a child or an adolescent or a teenager who doesn't really know any better, they think that the person is well intended.
That's the scary part. Because then what happens here is they wind up defending the groomer.
They do. Stockholm syndrome is what they call it.
And one of the things I also mentioned is the groomer makes the child also feel that they're a bit older, more mature. So age becomes an exception, like basically, or we become the exception. Sorry, you're mature than most 14-year-olds or whatever it is. So then when someone tries to pull her away from the groomer, she's already justified the relationship that you should basically trust me. I'm not like a normal 14-year-old girl. And then basically to them, the age is not a concern, even though it's morally and legally wrong.
Correct. Or they understand me like no one else does.
Yes. And then I got next question here. So this is about strict and controlling parents, which could still be a perspective. So what parents call protection, teens may call control. And again, this is the age where the children are looking for independence. So, it's like, yeah, but independence is introduced gradually, not all at once. Rules about curfews, phones, or friendship often spark rebellion. For teens like Celeste, who may already feel misunderstood, these rules can deepen the sense of being trapped. But strictness is subjective. Some parents enforce boundaries out of love and fear. Others may cross into domination. The difference often lies in communication and trust. So how do strict rules sometimes backfire with teenagers?
Actually, I see this backfire a lot with very religious homes or very culturally strict homes where the child just wants some sort of freedom. And so with teenagers, you got to give them a little bit. I mean, they need the freedom. They need to start making choices. This helps them with confidence, but you also have to oversee because as we know that they don't always make the best decisions. So you can't just say, okay, you can do whatever you want. But the things that you can give in on, I think that you should, so that they start to learn how to develop this executive functioning, which actually happens more into their 20s.
All right. And then I have, what's the healthy balance between discipline and freedom?
Yeah. $1 million question. Again, you always ask me good ones. I would say, with the freedom, again, you've got to do things that the consequences are not so dire. Maybe they want to stay out another hour or two. Okay. The family, that's fine. But you have to be really careful with what they do.
Yeah. What's funny, when I was looking at this question yesterday, the balance between discipline and freedom, I think the child has to know that things have to be earned, and discipline is a part of accountability. Yes. Discipline is a corrective measure, not a punitive measure. And I think that really does. What was that? I apologize.
And you're the parent. I mean, a lot of times, we try to be their friends, but it's very important that they understand that we're the parents and we know better. Of course, they don't think that we do, but they have to understand that there is a tiered, in the hierarchy of the family.
Yeah, and then I guess just in short is it has to be translated to a level that they understand because it
Correct.
is something that has to be earned. And I think sometimes even parents may a kid is always going to test boundaries. I
Yeah.
just feel they do it when they're babies, and then as their world gets a little bigger, their boundaries
Mhm.
tend to spread out a little
Yep.
more. So you have to kind of understand that boundaries are always going to be tested, but how you bring them back like that's the key. How you bring them back to what should be done, and they should know that, okay, I know boundaries are going to be tested, but with that said, these are the reasons why. I mean, are we quick to punish, or depending on what the consequences could be, or are we quick to maybe give an understanding as to why that boundary is in place? So you may have violated it, but you know what, nothing crazy happened, but this is what could have happened, and this is why that boundary is in place. So you
Yeah.
have a corrective moment.
Yes. Well, pushing boundaries are somewhat of a rite of passage. Developmentally, when we go from one stage to another, we are going to push boundaries because we're going to grow and we're going to evolve. But again, somebody needs to supervise and make sure that we're not doing this, that we're doing it safely. That's the
Right.
key.
Right. And if the boundaries aren't constantly reinforced, then you could have children that may find it easier if I run away the first time to run away the second time, to run away the third time. And maybe that was a concern. You know, maybe after so many times of running away, the parents kind of just, you know what, the urgency gets eroded a little bit. Oh, she'll be back. You
Yeah.
know, and I can see that happening with local law enforcement. This girl runs away all the time, but she always comes back. And eventually, because the girl keeps on doing it, whether it's habitual or chronic, whatever the difference would be, is the fact that it starts to erode on the urgency, because the end result is the girl always comes back. But what
Yeah.
I also tend to think is the more they tend to run away, especially if you have a groomer, the control is no longer in the parents' hands, because you could see that this is sad. But how my perspective starts to look at it is that if the groomer has that greater level of control, then the home isn't the last stop. The home becomes a visit.
Yes. Plus, trying to keep them in the home is, once they start running away, and particularly if they have incentive, it's almost impossible to, you try to lock the doors and put the alarm on, but kids are very crafty. They can figure out how to get out and how to make things work. And as we know, they're very masterful that way.
And when you I like what you just said with the incentive. So incentive could be something that they're running towards, or something that they're running away from, right?
Sure.
But and sometimes could it be, and I kind of touched on this before, but could it somehow be from an expert groomer a manipulation of both?
Yeah. And certainly they're opportunists. So they'll decide what needs to be done, and they can do it very quickly. And then they just sort of execute their plan. So whether they get them to run to it or they're pushing away, it doesn't really matter. It's all part of the master plan where they get power and control.
Yes, and I think ultimately that's the key. And I think when we did the show yesterday, we talked about, well, I did. Everybody's schedule was a little busy, so I wanted to put something out there just to challenge this one guy's perspective. And I noticed that running away could be a sense of control for the child, maybe, a breather, whatever it is, in a world that they see as stifling. Or on the scarier end, and this is why you just don't know, it could be manufactured by the groomer. So what could come up as first as she's just trying to escape or avoid could turn out being, no, she's actually being pulled. And I think at that point, doesn't that up the urgency a bit?
You would think so, but at this point, police have been out there so many times, and they probably think that this is just a cycle that happens until all of a sudden a body turns up, and this has become a major crime investigation.
And that's where we're at today. And the funny thing is, you always go to look back and hindsight 2020, but this case, the reason why this case to me is so complex is because sometimes when you look at something from where you're at now and have the knowledge to look back, and you hindsight bias, you unintentionally don't realize that you're putting pieces there, creating context that weren't there before, and making judgment on that context. That's newfound knowledge. This to me is the first time where I'm thinking, you know what, everything was so preventable here. And usually I don't say that a lot because I understand hindsight bias. I also have a degree in
Mhm.
psychology, so I understand how we may not be aware of the knowledge that we have that we're now putting into something that may not have had that knowledge back then. But the moment you got someone that's crossing the legal age, messing with an 11, 12-year-old, and you got everybody knowing about it,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Where's the urgency in trying to find out who this David is, and what are you doing with my daughter? I'm curious
Mhm.
about that.
But you gotta remember though, he had money. So
Yes,
we were talking about the difference between male predators and female predators and how sometimes the females get away with a lot more. You got
right.
somebody who's got money, and so now maybe they're not looking at him as closely as they probably should.
Well, I actually I think he just so I did a show yesterday. He actually just got a lawyer, a very high profile lawyer. So I think they're
Very good.
starting to close in on him now. Sorry about that. I should have gave you the latest update. I know you've been traveling.
I was listening to it, so I got a lot of your show yesterday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I think they are starting to close in on something. I don't know. It's not going to be anything related to the death just yet because the autopsy hasn't come back. But I think they got to be pushing something towards grooming, concealment, the stuff that's evident.
Yep.
So then I want to talk about emotional neglect. So neglect isn't always intentional. A parent juggling jobs or stress may unintentionally make a child feel invisible. Teens often lack the language to express that, so they simplify it into they don't care, like my parents don't care, or they don't see me. And I yesterday's show, I was talking about how feelings are complex, and a young teenager, when they're trying to figure out what they feel, they may label it wrong, because they only know those labels. So I'm angry, maybe it could be because the child's depressed, but they're not familiar with those terms. So they simplify it. And then they may act in frustration because the label may unfortunately affect their behavior. When in reality, they're not frustrated. They may be depressed or
Mhm.
confused. Celeste was described as unhappy. So was that neglect or was it unmet expectations? Either way, emotional neglect, perceived or real, leaves teens vulnerable to seeking connection elsewhere. Now,
Yes.
Denise, can a child feel neglected even when parents believe they're doing their best?
Yes. And not only that, but what we're seeing today is the families are so busy that a lot of times kids are isolating quite a bit. Everybody's, they'll get food and they'll go into their room, and what's waiting in their room but the internet, where all kinds of temptations come, and they live different lives, and they connect with people that you don't even know who they are. I mean, in my day, we played outside, and people say that's dangerous now, but I think it's more dangerous that they get on the internet by themselves, particularly when they're unhappy, and make connections that you have no idea whom they're connecting with.
Ain't that the scary part?
Mhm.
We touched on that as well because, again, I know this may be simple, but, I grew up, we only had one or two screens,
Yeah,
so we all
that's the
kind of
truth. And
sat in
one
the same
phone
room and
and
one
a family
phone.
phone. Mhm.
And you never know how much, multiple screens in a house could affect what a child grows into respecting or into following.
Yes,
And that's why I say, and I think we'll get to this later. School's a big part of understanding that because they're in the environment.
yes,
So teachers are pretty good at understanding what the trends are because it's like correctional officers working in a prison. We know these inmates because we're
yeah.
emerged with them.
The language.
We know the
Mhm.
language.
Mhm.
And hey, why is emotional neglect often harder to recognize than abuse?
Well, obviously, physical abuse is overt. I mean, you can see it, you can notice it, and so forth. Emotions, even like physical pain, I mean, it's hard to hide. Emotional neglect is a little bit harder because with teens, they're not quite developed. So they, as you know, because you have one, they're moody, they're happy, they're sad, and a lot of times it's hard to know what they're doing, or how they're feeling. So emotional neglect is something that goes under the radar pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think it's tough too. Let's say I got to push on the groomer thing a little bit because we got the David thing, and I'm really buying into the fact that that's what he did. How much is the emotions that she's feeling really hers, or how much has been manufactured, especially at a young age?
Yeah. Well, think about this. When you're an adolescent teenager, instead of your parents being your major influence, it's your friends. And your friends are not much smarter than you are. But in high school age, you hope that you're not going to do a whole lot of damage. You have somebody like this who's got money and is a lot older. This is prime opportunity for him to, bring her out of her unhappiness and her problematic home and give her, quote, a better life.
Yeah, and you know what? When we talked about some of the steps to grooming, it's funny because people have like these 6 steps, which I did in one of the episodes. But then when we related it to Celeste Rivas' case yesterday, we kind of changed the steps a little bit to make it apply a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And we kind of used if she's being groomed, then the runaway part is part of the isolation.
Yes. That's the first thing to do, is get them away from the family, get them away from anybody that can influence them otherwise. We see that even with domestic violence. The first thing that the person tries to do is, distance them from their family or anybody that could talk them out of, what the plan is.
And right. But you know what? So when we provide that perspective and say that if that is a groomer, and stage 3, I believe it was isolation, mm-hmm. that puts a whole nother definition to the word runaway. Because if someone said, hey, Celeste Rivas, yeah, she was a runaway. Well, that makes me feel that she had total control of her leaving the house. And maybe on the surface, that's what it looks like. But if you have an older individual, a mature adult to some extent, influence in this person's head, yeah, the behavior may seem to be that she's in control, but as a 13-year-old girl, I don't want to give them 100% control. So when I say that the person is a runaway, it's like putting 100% responsibility on her, 100% accountability mm-hmm. on her choice to run away. So I'm thinking maybe runaway in regards to being groomed, in regards to the isolation factor of being groomed, runaway is not a good label for that, because it kind of paints Celeste Rivas as a 13-year-old girl that was in total control of her actions.
Mm-hmm. I would like to use the word lured.
Yes.
She was sort of lured away from, her home and so forth. I mean, I don't know, runaway, that tells me they don't want to be at home and they want a better life. But going into the arms of somebody else that's much older, I think lured is a better word.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen. Hey guys, if you watch the show, let me know. Have we seen that anywhere? Because lured also does one other thing that's extremely important. Puts responsibility on the groomer, because mm-hmm. runaway minimizes it.
Yes.
And I don't think I've seen the word lured. I've seen the word groom to some extent, but it's like, I don't know if groom and runaway partner well.
Correct.
I don't, because it kind of minimizes the outcome of what a groomer does.
Yes, exactly.
So now I have abuse or unsafe conditions. So this is unverified in Celeste's case, but rumors about bruises swirled, but nothing was verified. Abuse, when real, is one of the strongest drivers for running away, but unverified claims, once amplified, can unfairly brand families forever. That was my biggest concern. Mm-hmm. So when a teen reports abuse, but no records exist, how should professionals proceed?
Well, certainly. Sorry. Certainly, there needs to be a lot of history taken by the psychiatrist. I mean, you have to. There's a lot of pieces to a puzzle when a person comes into therapy. So you have to get a really good history. You have to understand a lot of layers to the family dynamics and so forth. So, it's something that just can't be decided overnight.
Okay, so then that brings us to the next question. What are the dangers of assuming every runaway is escaping abuse? Because that's what the podcast have been. It's I don't even know where the switch occurred. At one point, I was watching them and it was very objective, and then TMZ kind of affected News Nation, and all of a sudden, I start getting confused because the family are being painted as these bad guys, and I'm like, based on what? This interview with a young kid, which wasn't even the most impressive interviews, and then just everybody saying, oh, the police went to her house 11 times. Yeah, but if you read the article and you get down to the bottom of the article, it aligns with her running away. The troubled home, okay, what does that mean?
Right.
What does troubled home means? And that's why I titled the episode Troubled Home, because I just like, hey guys, are we jumping to conclusions? I mean, there's action showcased that the sister tried to find out where she was. And here's the funny thing, so when the story first breaks, they talk about some of the times that the Celeste ran away, and one of the earlier times before the final runaway was sometime in March. Well, February 14th was one of the times they know, but somewhere in March, she's caught early in the morning running past a liquor store, and what they believed to be was a car that was parked. But the camera really didn't catch her going into the car. The liquor store owner is the one that said he saw the car take off and he believed with her in it. But again, I'm verified. So when they were sharing the story about police going to the house, she's like, oh, some neighbors saw police going down the street, but be advised, again, you got to watch the whole interview. Be advised, we don't know if they stopped at their house. That's another wild thing. But they talked about the sister and how she went to the liquor store that day or soon after. Whenever they knew the video was there, she went to get the video, right? So everybody's like, okay, of course, who would not do that as a bang, bang, bang? Of course, that's great. She's doing what she should do as a sister. But then as the story starts to twist, now stuff is coming up like, well, she should have gone more times to get more answers. It's like, what are we doing? You were just saying she, did what she had to do. And now just to create the narrative, she should have done more. If that was my child, I would have done more, or my sister. But again, what are the dangers of assuming every runaway is escaping abuse? Sorry about that.
Well, and I've seen kids run away because the parents are too strict. So, I mean, again, you can't always assume abuse. You get it. You find this as therapists, we have to be careful that we don't make our own assumptions and go down a narrative that makes sense to us. I mean, you've got to look at a lot of layers. I mean, there's a lot with this.
And by the way, you could find strict parents in loving homes.
Sure, absolutely.
Probably more than homes where the family don't give a shit.
Yeah. Very true.
That's interesting. So that could encourage a runaway from good homes.
Yeah. One of the days that she ran away, though, was Valentine's Day.
Yeah, February 14th.
Yeah. So you wonder what lured her out that, Valentine's Day. It's a day for love.
I don't think anybody's brought that up, Denise. Ding, 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 ding. Great perspective. Yeah. Now everybody's concerned about, there's a concern with the timeline. I did a video on it. So there was a gap where from like early April of 2024 to when they found her body, the day after her birthday was at September 8th of 2025. They thought that she was gone missing that whole time. But then there's a video of her at a family event somewhere around where her birthday was, of September 8th. It is. It's September 8th. It's exactly a year where they found her body. And it's the year before, in that gap, in that length of time. So now they're like, oh, the timeline's all messed up. The family, okay, but to sit there and say that's enough to say that she's coming from a real bad and abusive home and all this other stuff. I'm curious about the timeline, but again, not enough to run towards this negative direction. So now I wanted to do peer pressure and outside influence. So peers and online contacts shape how teens see themselves and their families. So in Celeste's case, online spaces may have magnified her sense of frustration at home. I mean, it's funny. Kids today, they only see outcomes. They don't see efforts. And if you got a kid on YouTube doing things that she wants to do, and the parents either can't afford it or whatever the case may be, the parents are the bad guys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
So this is where grooming emerges. Groomers don't simply persuade, they reshape perception. They redefine home as oppressive and themselves as the only safe escape. Teens then protect the groomer because rejecting them feels like rejecting their own autonomy. So how much influence
Yes.
do online communities and peers really have on runaway decisions?
Well, they paint this wonderful picture of how life could be if they were understood. And they play right into the fact that they're not seeing, the forest for the trees here. So you can see how easily it is to groom somebody who is of that sort of age, that impressionable age. But they know exactly what they're doing. They're actually pretty masterful at what they do, as I've mentioned many times.
And that's the scary part, because they do it in the shadows. And one of the things I mentioned the other day is that stranger danger really is not the only lesson that has to be taught, because it's not the strangers that are taking them away, but rather the child feels they know the individual or infatuated by the individual. So how do you correct interactions where the child actually feels, what's the word, parasocial?
I'm not
I
sure.
think parasocial. Yeah, I think parasocial is a term where there's an infatuation, maybe towards a celebrity, or basically some type of surface relationship that really isn't about the individual, but the persona or the brand.
Yeah.
So it basically familiarizes the child with his TikTok stardom, but that's not really who the individual is. Or I'm in love with Leonardo DiCaprio. No, you're not, because Leonardo DiCaprio has a very negative history with women. No offense, Leo, but just what's on the news, or at least if you have a problem with that, follow TMZ. But a lot of them are in love with Jack, the person that played Jack Dawson, the person he played in Titanic. You know, but first question here is, again, how much influence do online communities and peers really have on runaway decisions? I think it could be a big influence, correct?
Yes. And you got to remember, though, that what they're trying to get is their trust. So they're building relationships. And, we think that people are going to take our kids by snatching them off the street. But what they are doing a lot of times behind the screen is building this relationship, building this trust, building this understanding of, we know what life is like for you, and we can make it better if you just sort of come to us. And the kids, take the bait and go hook, line, and sinker, unfortunately.
And that's one of our dilemmas, because these dialogues are happening in secret.
Yes. And behind closed doors, right in your home.
Yeah, with social media.
Yes.
A person with a social media account with thank you, TikTok, because you pretty much gave a groomer a loud microphone and put him on top of a mountain.
You certainly did.
And then I have, do you believe outside influence was central in Celeste's choices?
Well, I have a feeling that David sort of lured her in, but it sounds like, since he was fairly famous, that he had a lot of people that were either his assistants and so forth that sort of bought into the whole scenario.
So that's funny, because I think sometimes when she told people she was running away and then she would say David, that was kind of like bragging for her. Maybe some level of social status. So, how many teenagers do you think and this is the dangers of having someone like David in that position that has the ability to influence because of that fame, because of that stardom. If it wasn't Celeste, could it have been another girl?
Anybody. What would be better than to be dating somebody who's very famous and who has a lot of money? The kids in high school, all they want to do is be popular. But here you have this guy that's, doing concerts and all of that. To me, that probably seems like something that, would be her best dream come true.
So could there have been a chance that her peers, the ones that were in the best position to help her, could have also influenced her to go?
Yeah. Yeah. You can imagine, again, none of them have a whole lot of sense. And they probably said, oh, this is great. And he seems wonderful. And you're so lucky. And I'm assuming a lot of this, but this is, what kids are, again, they're me. So they want to be in the limelight and so forth. So, this all fits together perfectly.
So I kind of said this yesterday, but like in an environment like this, for a young girl like her, where this could be connected to social status, he is a rising fame, and I'm sure a lot of girls may think like Celeste, you would have more of a push than a pull.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So again, that goes beyond just family. You know what's funny? It really does take a community to raise a child.
It really does.
I mean, when you
It
think
really
about all
does.
this. So I wanted to explore romantic and secret relationships, definitely for what we're covering here. So romance, especially forbidden romance, is one of the strongest runaway motivators.
Mhm.
Celeste's rumored connection to David fits the pattern. So
Yes.
secrecy gives teens a thrill, but groomers, it's a weapon.
Mhm.
And that's why I said this thing to me was just a tool. It really was some level of control. So by validating the teen, telling them they're mature, or dismissing the law as irrelevant, older partners make wrong feel justified. So why are secret relationships so powerful for teens?
Well, certainly when we're getting to our teenage years, we're starting to feel the sexual urges, or at least romance, or what we believe to be romance, from movies and from books and so forth. And so now you have somebody that's luring you in because you're beautiful, or you're smart, or you're so sexy and so forth. With what we see on social media, this is what the kids want or hope for.
Yeah, and that obviously benefits the groomer.
Oh, absolutely.
And I always say there's a way. What they do with the secret is that they make it seem like it is beneficial, because in their mind, the secret, they know it's the connection's illegal, just not correct, immoral, whatever you want to use. But for the teenager, I think the teenager kind of sees the secret as some level of control. Even though it's being pushed on her, I still feel the teenager says that that's the one piece that I have.
Or the fantasy, or the fantasy,
or the fantasy.
The fantasy of what they hope that their life will be like, connected with this guy that's so rich and famous and talented and has money and power.
So that, to me, that's where I see the conflict in Celeste, because right, you just said something that's very important here. So you would have it makes sense for me to believe that Celeste was telling people, maybe her parents, she's seeing David, maybe not David the celebrity, but just David. And that makes sense for the parents to think that. But for her friends, it makes sense for her to say it's David the celebrity, because one is about secrecy and control with her parents. If they don't know, I have control. But with her friends, it's about social status.
Yeah. And we talked last time about the matching tattoos. That's not just something that you get quickly when you're dating somebody. That's part of the bond in the relationship. We get these, we match, we're connected, we're committed to each other. I mean, you don't just get matching tattoos overnight.
And for him, I thought that was his first sign of control. When she got that tattoo, he knew he controlled it.
Yeah.
How do older partners exploit vulnerabilities to keep teens hooked?
Well, they certainly know their weaknesses, and they know, again, that they don't, I've said this before, this executive functioning, they don't think things through. So they prey upon that, and knowing that they're not actually thinking of all the consequences, and they're bringing them in. But this is all about power and control.
And it's good for us to recognize this, because look what happened here. It's funny because I got my mind thinking here. So she's a victim in regards to what happened to her, and however, what accident we don't know yet, but however she was found in the frunk, right? But when it came to the runaway, I mean, I don't know if people were pushing her as being the person that chose to do it or the victim, but she's still the victim.
She's still a victim. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Even if she's running towards something. So if I want to paint the victim picture is not always painted because we believe, well, in order for a runaway to be a victim, they have to come from an abusive home. No, it also could be what they're running towards that makes them a victim.
Yeah. But she's the victim. I mean, it's
more ways than one.
Exactly.
So I wanted to touch on mental health because that does add into this. Depression, anxiety, and trauma can make home feel unbearable, even if home isn't abusive. Teens really say, I'm depressed. They say, I need out. I need out. I need an escape. Celeste's repeated runaways may have been tied to unrecognized mental health needs worsened by grooming. Now, there is the video of her in the with the family, the backyard thing that's outside that's within the time frame she went missing. I mean, you could see definitely she stands her ground, a bit assertive, but she does have this crazy scream, maybe out of frustration. Who knows? I mean, maybe you do have a child that could have a mental health concern. We don't know because she's also reacting to something. So I don't know how much of it is pressured by the situation or how much she's bringing into the situation. Is she the one reacting or is she the one causing everybody else to react?
Right.
But question for you, Denise, how can, Celeste's repeated runaways may have been tied to unrecognized mental health needs worsened by grooming. So how can parents spot the difference between teen mood swings and serious mental health issues?
Well, certainly we're looking for patterns. So one of the things that I look for in teens is whether they have you're looking at their grades, because usually that's one of the ways that we sort of notice procrastination, exhaustion. Usually that's sort of on the other end of a lot of anxiety. So we don't know if she was just really rebellious. We don't really know like what her mental health status was. We do know that she was certainly looking for something for some sort of relief and happiness. Whether she had a mental health component to that, it's hard to say.
And you know what? That does add a little.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes parents may not even realize their child has a mental health concern. Now you have a house that's just frustrated because they don't know what to do. And how many times and I don't want to make a stereotype because I don't mean that, but I mean, do we think that, maybe during her young teenage years here before she met, or even during, who knows, after she ran away, was she taking any mental health services? And it doesn't mean, so let's say she wasn't. That doesn't always paint the parents as bad parents. Maybe the parents don't have the resources. So maybe after she ran away, did law enforcement or something in the community say, hey, we got a frequent runaway here. Maybe we should help reach out to the family and see if maybe we could provide a mental health provider.
Yeah. And we certainly don't know what the school's involvement was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Was she going to school regularly? Was she ever referred to the school counselor? Because, the school really has a good, hand on the pulse of what's going on a lot of times at home.
Yeah, I wonder what her grades were like. Did she cut class? Yeah. I mean, everybody talks about, what's funny thing is, everybody talks about her running away from home because they establish home as maybe where there's a point of major conflict, but maybe you can see the pattern if she's never in classes.
Yeah.
Outside of the time frame that obviously she's ran away. I get that. She wouldn't be in class technically, but what about even prior to that when she was 11 or when she was with the family? Was she going to school?
Yep.
The pattern outside of her always running away from the family. Maybe that pattern exists in other things.
Yeah. Maybe she had behavioral problems at school. Yeah. I mean, that would be something to look into.
And that definitely will carry out probably worse at home.
Yes. Yeah. Usually they're better behaved at school, but sometimes if there's problems in both areas, then you've got to look at some mental health concerns.
And we don't know enough about how she was at school outside of the family life. And then what interventions could have helped Celeste earlier?
Well, of course, we always say hindsight is 20/20, but after all these frequent calls to the police and getting law enforcement in, it would have been nice if they had gotten some mental health to come in and sort of evaluated, and I don't know if there's any criteria with that, but it would have been a good idea to have somebody go in and I do a lot of family counseling, and that might have been something that would have been helpful. Just maybe it wouldn't have changed the outcome, but just to help the whole family just sort of go through this whole process and sort of try to rein some of it in.
And that's one thing about counseling, right? You have to work with the individual, make sure you also address the environment, right?
Yeah. And when I see kids, particularly teenagers, I bring the parents in because what the kids tell me and what the parents tell me are usually two different things.
Perspective.
I'll say to the kids, how are you doing in school? Oh, fine. You have any problems? No. And then the parents come in and say, they don't turn in assignments, they're failing. And so you got to bring the family in so you get a really good understanding of what's happening.
Yeah. And also to bring them on board, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And a kid that's running away, I mean, you need the whole family to weigh in, the sister, the parents. I mean, everybody's got to give some understanding so that because you're trying to put a puzzle together and you can't do that with one piece.
Yeah. And I think she definitely had a sister because that's who saw the video from the liquor store, and then a brother who knew about David.
Yeah. So
So I got seeking independence as part of running away. So running away isn't always escape. Sometimes it's an experiment in freedom. Teens
Mhm.
often overestimate survival skills only to find themselves unprepared. Celeste,
Yes.
multiple runaways suggest she may have been testing this independence, like you mentioned, but each attempt made her more vulnerable to outside control. So, Denise, why do teens think they're more capable of independence than they are?
It's interesting. When I go and speak to high schools, high schoolers, I'll say something like, "Well, what are you planning on doing?" And they'll say, "Oh, I want to be a pilot." But they can't pass math. They're not doing well in school. So we have these grandiose ideas of like what life looks like on the other side, or that we're just going to get out of high school and make all this money. And so a lot of times, they're not really realistic. So they see themselves surviving on their own when they don't even have a job, and some of these other ludicrous fantasies.
Yeah, it's pretty funny that you said that because I think they figure. Listen, when I was a kid, and if I had graduated the fifth grade, I thought I could be a teacher for the fourth grade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any level down from, and you don't realize how complicated it is to actually even be a pre-K teacher. I can't do any of it, and I graduated college.
Yeah,
Uh, you know,
absolutely. Yeah, I've seen kids. A lot of times we think that we have it all figured out, or I'll see kids get out of high school and they'll say, "I don't want to mop floors," and I go, "I know, but right now you're not capable of doing a whole lot more." It's like I realize that's beneath you, but at this level, it's not.
right. So could they have a very limited or superficial definition of independence?
Yeah, they do. And again, this is because their prefrontal cortex, which is right in the front, has not developed. So, and that's our reasoning and thinking things through. That's one of the reasons why they get their driver's license and they go 100 miles an hour in a 55, because they're not thinking of all the things that could happen and all the harm that can be done. And so this is why, when they start driving, it's really another level of concern.
And then I got, how can parents grant safe independence without driving rebellion?
Yeah, and that's where conversation and constant, you really have to monitor it. I'm just grateful that when I had my kids, they didn't have quite as much social media exposure, because that must be really challenging for the parents, because you don't know what happens when they shut the door. I know a lot of the pediatricians don't want any sort of devices in the kids' bedrooms for this reason.
I mean, but right, but I gotta say that I have to agree with you 100%, because even in my thing, if let's say I don't even want to jinx myself, but let's just say, she's chatting to people that she shouldn't chat to. I mean, I have her on my phone. I can see what
Yeah,
she's doing. But the more you put things in play, the more they circumvent them,
they
because
do.
they figure it out quicker. So you're following one thing, but they're already it's like I'm playing checkers, they're playing chess actually.
Exactly. Yeah. They learn how to get around the system.
So
Which,
I know this may sound crazy, but is there a way where I didn't talk about this in my last show, but I'm thinking about it now, actually. Let me just shut my phone off for a second so I don't see my notes. I have a thought here. Is there a way to have a child start to develop their own independence? Obviously you still have some level of introducing it to them. I get that. But is it possible where maybe sometimes a child doesn't mind violating some of those consequences, because in the end of the day, punitive, being punished, maybe none of that shit matters. But what about if it's about building a connection with your child to the point where they feel if they violated that trust, yes, it's about them, but it's also about the people that trusted them.
Mm-hmm.
Can you draw empathy from them at that age towards their parents?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But with parents, you know this as well as I do, you have to really rely on your instincts, because when they're usually up to something, you sort of get a hunch. They're acting a little bit strange, or maybe they're on their best behavior. And the first thing that we wonder is, what are they up to? Even
That's true.
toddlers, we have that.
That's true. And I see, I don't know if, when I was talking to you not too long ago, I think, but my daughter with her homework, and wanted to know if I was doing it correctly. She wasn't. and I had trusted her,
Mhm.
and I just wanted to see it. She started hiding it, but she was telling me she was doing good, but then she started protecting it, which made me more curious, so I took it.
Yeah.
And what got me upset about this situation wasn't the fact that she wasn't doing the homework correctly. Was the fact that, and again, my daughter loves me. It's just, 12-year-old girl trying to figure things out here. But
Right.
so it's no knock on her. So she watched this video later. Sweetie, it's just a situation I learned from, because she's my life. They both are. In case they ever get in a true crime later and they watch this video, I love you both. This is more of a reflection on me, not on you.
Just disclosure, right?
Yeah, a disclosure. And plus, I'm on the couch, Denise. Listen to me. I'm allowed. We'll keep this confidential. So just the way she was able to lie.
Oh, yeah.
And not think nothing of it.
Yeah.
And the first thing I took as, it's not about covering up, but you didn't even care how the lie would affect me. And I got upset about that.
Yeah. They haven't quite developed it, but what a lot of kids lie when they get anxious. So all of a sudden, they're discovered and they don't know what to do. So they just try to lie and get through it.
Right. And you want to hear something funny? If Celeste told the kids at school that David was who David was, but to her parents, David couldn't be the celebrity to them because of his age, they could have thought, honestly, that David was just a 13-year-old kid, no different than she was, because also they may not be familiar with TikTok. I mean, if I wouldn't know who the hell David was.
No, I didn't either before we started looking into this.
So I want to go back to school pressure for another reason. So when I was developing this, I did the peer pressure, but then I was thinking, you know what? Let me go back, because there's something else I thought would be interesting. So guys, I'm going to go back to school real quick. School pressure. So bullying or failure can combine with home struggles to create the final straw, which you mentioned, actually touched on that. Celeste's peers noted her openness about her connection to David, which may have been a way of boosting her status, which I mentioned, but also exposed her to peer judgment. So how much responsibility should school carry in spotting at-risk kids?
Well, it's interesting. I work with a lot of as teachers as clients. And a lot of times they'll notice some problems with the kids and they already will know that the family dynamics are struggling. I mean, that's just sort of, because again, we got to remember all these pieces have got to fit in a puzzle, and you shouldn't see a child have all of these difficulties and struggles when there's not another layer to it that needs to be explored.
Yeah. And guys, obviously people in authoritative positions, including teachers, the reason why they have to report things like this, where it's a must, not a should, is because everybody knows that they're the ones that are going to know.
Yeah. Me too.
Oh, you have to
report. Yeah.
Because they know that you are in a position automatically to probably know.
Yes.
Go
ahead.
But on the adverse, you're also in a position to hide it.
Well, and it depends upon what it is. If it's something where they say, my parents fight all the time and all of that, this is where it's a fine line, because there's, what are you going to do? Call Child Protective Services because the parents fight? So this is where the therapist at some point should bring in, without sort of betraying confidentiality with the child, and try to understand, which, believe it or not, is more instinctual, what's going on at home. So you come in, you just sort of ask some general questions. The interesting thing is, when there's problems at home, usually by the end of the hour session, it's pretty apparent. You can just sort of feel the tension. I watch how they interact with each other. I watch if they collaborate each other's stories. So there's a lot to sort of to consider.
Right. And I believe and you know more than I would on this, but I believe there's also is there evasiveness versus avoidance? Is there times where you see interactions with the parents and the child, and the child's just totally avoidant of the parent?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, and this from corrections, this is where your instincts really have to kick in. I watch where they sit. I watch if one parent takes over the conversation and the other one just sort of sits there. And the whole time the parents are talking, I'm watching the child to look at how they're responding. Are they sort of, again, shutting down, and I'll say something like, is this something that you're agreeing with, and so forth. I'm trying to see how if they have enough courage to speak up, or if they just go, no, he's right, or no, she's right.
Or where they look before they speak as if they have to get permission.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether they're looking back and forth or whether they're choosing their words carefully.
Yeah, that's unique because sometimes you'll see an angry teen, she don't give a shit. She'll talk directly to the counselor, but then when you put other people in the room, all of a sudden, you're right, they censor themselves, or because they're more afraid of maybe the kickback later.
Yep.
I wanted to add this question: could peer dynamics have shaped Celeste's decision? The reason why I asked this was we talked about social status, right? So. Sometimes people have an infatuation for celebrity, and I get it. He's a celebrity. Why would he give me this time? But eventually, I think to some level, you stop seeing the celebrity, you start seeing the person, through routine, whatever the case may be. So D4VD becomes just David Anthony Burke eventually. But I think at some point, there's still the fact that you're still with the celebrity, at least from your peers. So even if that thrill starts to die out, your peers can kind of push it more because you're with David. And I think it's not that you want to be with David, but rather how you're seen.
Correct. The envy of it, being very envious of the status of being with a celebrity.
And a young kid like Celeste could definitely not just feel the envy, but maybe want that envy.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Does that relate to the me?
That's the me, and that's I want to be popular and I want to be accepted, and I mean it's everything. I mean, you see what kids post on social media. It's all how pretty I am, how many friends I have, what kind of activities I'm in. Of course, a lot of that is their fantasy of what they're trying to convince other people. But she's got somebody that she's actually connected to. They have matching tattoos, and he's a celebrity. I mean,
Now, I wonder if you could see the high and low in that too, because if I was a groomer and I'm grooming Celeste, she's connected to my fame, so that gives her some level of status or whatnot. But I also I could definitely create momentum for her on that and feed that, but I also could take it away.
Yeah. But you got to remember, we talked about this before, when you get that much power and ego, you get sloppy. So you don't start thinking about what she's going to say or how she's going to act and so forth. So, I mean, that just happens. They get really sloppy. The more that they get control, that's when they start making mistakes.
Because they get lax. They get laxed in their level of control, because then the control probably leans towards an expectation that they expect the person to always carry out.
Yes. I mean, they all of a sudden start to feel like it's all taken care of, but they're starting to miss that some of the things that might become unhinged.
That's interesting, because then eventually, when the person is probably already in the process of breaking free, but I mean, it could be another perspective where he couldn't let her break free anyway. So the moment he lost an ounce of that control and he starts to realize it, that ounce could be detrimental to him. However small.
I would wonder if something started to happen in the relationship and she started to cause, I'm going to put this in quotes, problems, either for his reputation or so forth, because all of a sudden, we're getting matching tattoos and I'm luring you in, to all of a sudden she's found in the trunk.
And didn't we put that down as one of the motives? Because we did. So guys, if you check it out, we did an older video. We came up with a bunch of motives, and then eventually we zeroed in on just the overdose, the panic, only because of the sloppiness of the concealment. But we did put romantic involvement, and then a breakup, and then a loss of control. I had to add, because of teenagers, I put substance use or risk environment. So drugs, alcohol, and risky circles often pull runaways deeper into danger. Substances can be both a lure, freedom to party, let's say, and a trap, dependence that makes control easier for groomers. Again, also the trap can be mentally, the feeling of hopelessness. Questions for you, Denise, is why are runaways more likely to experiment with substances?
Well, I mean, this is something fairly typical of teenagers. They start to, they want to be popular and so forth. So they'll start with a little marijuana and so forth. But we used to call that, when I did addictions, the gateway drug. Next thing you know, they're starting to do more and more and more, and which is very expensive. That's one thing. When I specialized in addiction, I I just had never really thought about how much it costs to get drugs off the street or how much it was for marijuana. Well, now you're sort of becoming sort of, again, lured into getting into something that gets over your head. And this is how a lot of girls get into the human trafficking.
Yeah, and obviously it also outside that also connects to a thrill, correct? Maybe that's also a greater sense of independence too. The fact that I'm doing something that I know my parents wouldn't want me to do. I mean, is there ever a point where they're controlled by their rebellion, that they just do things just because they can, not because they want to?
I think they get hooked in. I think all of a sudden, and then we see this with addiction, where all of a sudden the addiction has the power. But
interesting.
one of the things, though, with this whole body in the front, we have to. One of the things that we haven't talked about is rigor mortis sets in. That's when the body gets really stiff, anywhere from like 2 to 6 hours. And I don't know how big those frunks are, but I don't think that they're that big.
I have a picture.
Okay, because you wonder, like, to get a body in a bag and put it in there when the body is starting to get stiff. You wonder about the timeline there. That's just
I think you made a good point, because I just did a video prior just about the dismemberment. I think people automatically may have assumed that she may have been chopped up to fit into this little thing, when technically she was a smaller girl. She could have decomposed, but I think she, sad to say, but maybe they did it in a way where they just folded her up. And but I think you hit on something, because I think they may have assumed that in order for her to fit there, that's what happened, because they didn't know if that was a grown adult or not.
Yeah, and that would have had to come sooner rather than later, because once they get stiff, I know this used to be a critical care nurse, but once bodies start to get stiff, they get really hard to handle. Like sometimes getting them in a body bag and getting them to the morgue. We try to do that sooner rather than later, before they really got stiff and difficult to move.
So she have been put there when she was alive, and it's funny, because I think when they saw the size of that frunk, I think most people, as I mentioned, could have thought it was an adult. Who was to think it would be a young teenage girl? And they probably jumped with the fact that an normal adult wouldn't fit in there. So it's probably parts of an adult.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Easy to sort of confuse it.
Yeah. And then obviously goes like wildfire.
Yeah.
How does drug exposure amplify vulnerability?
Well, as I was mentioning before, drugs are very expensive. And so what I've seen when I have some experience with human trafficking, believe it or not, they get lured in mostly by women, but they promise them, all the drugs that they want and so forth. But what they don't realize is they're going into a trap. And before they know it, they're into this human trafficking arena where they can't get out of.
Well, remember, that's a good point, because they were doing investigations in female prisons, because a lot of them would get arrested and then recruit.
Yeah. In fact, the case that I had,
in Florida was a big one.
Yeah. And the only reason that this girl got out of it is there was a sting. So there was an investigation but she was put up in a hotel room and kept so high and that she didn't, but I mean, it was a very sad case.
So guys, I may have done a show on this a while back, and I'm actually almost positive I did. And I think the guest I had was a guy named, hold on, bear with me, because you can look it up. Put Tear Talk. It's interesting that you brought this up. Put Tear Talk and put Tear Talk. Put John Meekins.
There you go.
Do you recognize that name?
No.
Put Tear Talk, put John Meekins, because supposedly he started this thing in Florida where he worked at a female facility and started noticing that there was recruitment. And then eventually he started making a rightfully a big deal about it. And then he started to be shut down, then wind up. He was on The Guardian. Yeah, I would look up John Meekins Tear Talk. It's actually very interesting. Exactly what you just said. Yeah. John Meekins, Meekins, but it's exactly, and it was in Florida. He started to expose trafficking in women prisons. I think it was Florida. It was very interesting you said that. I worked in a women's prison, so I know what happens. I just don't think it's taken as seriously, but maybe now it would be. This is years ago. I wanted to do about troubled home again, one more, because we're getting ready to wrap it up. There's about 3 more sections left.
Sure.
Troubled home in quotes is misleading without context. So troubled home is too broad. Without context, it can mean strict rules, conflict, neglect, or abuse. In Celeste's case, it's based on perception, not verified records. Media repetition risks turning perspective into fact, creating judgment without truth. So why is it harmful to oversimplify cases like Celeste with labels like troubled homes?
Yes. And as far as we know, she was the only problem, or what police were getting called out for. We don't know what was happening with the sister or the brother. Because if there was a lot of trouble, you would think that something would happen with them. Police were called out with them too.
Yes.
But what we definitely know is there were problems in the home, but we don't know to what degree.
You made a good point, because that's something that someone else also mentioned too. That, hey, what about the daughter? I mean, how old? I don't even know their ages. Anybody know their ages that follow this? Let me know, because I don't even know how old they are. And then how do these labels shape investigations and public opinion? I guess I did a whole show on this, but I wanted your perspective on this.
Well, I think public opinion, the first thing is, we sort of jump to conclusions and we come up with our own narrative. You see that with pretty much any story. So this is why these kind of shows are really helpful, so that we can look at it from all different angles and all different lenses, and then come up with, well, this could be, this could be, this could be. And then, hopefully, we can offer empathy to the parents, and the families, which in this case, I don't care how anything plays out. This is just a tragedy.
Yeah, and I think kind of what I'm doing now with the channel is I got a lot of correctional videos, so I'm going to stay forward with true crime, because I feel there's an impact where, one, you could be the voice for the victim or find lessons within the tragedy, which we have. We had that hot car seat death. We brought that into light, a different perspective. Then we did this case here that we're following now about grooming. We did one on female sex offenders, and are they taken as serious as male sex offenders? And for Emmanuel Harrow, I mean, do we register serial child abusers?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's just take advantage of what's being tossed out there, because maybe there's a message that needs to be heard, or people need to be more mindful of.
Yes. And hopefully we can prevent future stuff by learning about how these situations happen.
Yeah. And hopefully videos like this get into the right hands.
Yes.
Two more sections. I got why teens like Celeste are at risk. So runaways are approached by predators within 48 hours, yet runaway reports often receive less urgency than abductions. Celeste's repeated runaways may have caused authorities to underestimate the risk. Its disappearance normalized as just another episode. We talked about that. But grooming escalates. Each time a teen runs away, the control grows deeper, because that is part of the final step of grooming, is the maintenance of the control. Why do predators target runaways so quickly?
Well, they're sort of the easiest to prey upon. They're looking for somebody to rescue them. So for somebody who's grooming, a runaway would be the perfect opportunity. Remember, they're opportunists.
Yes. And remember, guys, John Wayne Gacy, he would target runaway boys until his infatuation for a boy that actually had a family that cared for him is what made him get caught. So sometimes a lot of people target runaways because they feel that they're forgotten.
Yeah. It's interesting, even with mental health, people will come in and they're very manipulative. And once they realize that they can't manipulate me, they just don't come back. But I can watch them sort of just ask me these questions, and usually they're very complimentary. And by the end of the session, they're not coming back. It's just a waste of time. They're pretty smart that way.
That's also, I mean, to know that though.
Oh yeah. But to watch them work, it's just, I can see how they lure people in, with what they're trying to get away with, and you've seen it in corrections too. I mean, they tell a really polished story, and if you're not careful, you can sort of buy into it if you're not, things.
These two books I have here are centered on grooming.
Yeah.
Innate manipulation, decoded, and breaking boundaries, because technically I was fascinated by the process, not just the outcome. Like the outcome will minimize. I'll never bring in drugs, but then you minimize the process and then you see it happen, and it's like, well, that guy's a fool. Well, wait a second, not necessarily, because when you put the person as being a fool, you kind of minimize the intelligence of a game that's truly by a professional con artist.
Yeah, talk about
with no level of empathy. What was it?
Yeah. We were talking about checkers and chess. I mean, you come in and think that they're playing checkers, and yet they're way beyond that.
6 steps ahead. And then How should society change its response to runaway cases?
Well, one of the things that I sort of came to light when I was talking before is I do think, and this is something since I work closely with law enforcement, I do think that once police are involved with like maybe 2 or 3 calls, I really do think mental health needs to come in and sort of see what's going on in the family. One, it would reduce the number of calls that they get if they're starting to become repeated, and also to sort of look for another layer of problems in the home that maybe could be avoided if somebody comes in that's skilled and could make some recommendations.
Yeah, it's smart.
Mhm.
Again, we have to. I think I know it's tough for us to say this, but I think we all have a role, which means that
I
we all
think
need to take responsibility. Even if a case like Celeste, yeah, it happened in Riverside County, California, but it affects us in Jersey. So how do we all play a role?
sure
Because
does.
there's more than one Celeste out there. It just happens to be this one's in Riverside County.
Yep. And
Um,
we know it takes a village.
a village to raise a child.
It does.
So I got some closing thoughts here, some questions for the audience, and then if you have anything you want to add before we close. So I said the Celeste story forces us to ask deeper questions. Was her home truly troubled, or was her perspective reshaped by outside influence? Were her runaway rebellion or cries for help? We may never know her full truth, but what we do know is this: labels like troubled home don't protect kids. Understanding the complexity behind each runaway case might. So these are 4 questions I want to kick back to the audience. Sort of what we covered.
Hmm.
So to the audience, what do you think troubled home meant to Celeste? Could her runaways have been a sign of grooming rather than rebellion? How can we distinguish normal conflict from danger in our own communities? And what should change in how law enforcement and media handle runaway cases? You have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would encourage parents. I mean, the teenage years, as we know, are very challenging. Anthony, certainly you can attest to that. I would encourage parents to consider sometimes getting their children evaluated or the family as a whole with a mental health counselor. If you're having the same problems over and over, whether it's poor grades, procrastination, anxiety, depression, again, before all of years go by and this starts to spiral out of control, get some help. There's plenty of help out there, and I think it's important to utilize it.
Yes, and Denise, books, website. Let's kind of like to basically show people what you got going on in case they want to find you directly.
Yes. I would love for the viewers to connect with me at deniseshownwall.com. Books are on there. You can subscribe to my newsletter, which only comes out quarterly, and I would love to hear from you.
All right, and guys, as always, the show is Tear Talk. We're trying to give you what we can. I've been covering this case from a lot of different angles, so feel free to check out the older videos. Feel free to go through the content we have up here. I'm going to probably try to do some more videos on this case because this case is forever changing. So I'm probably going to try to stay up to date with it, try to watch what the other people are putting out there. But if there is other crimes out there that you feel that we could provide a bit of a perspective to, email me at Gangi, Gangi, Anthony at yahoo.com. So my name right there, just put it in reverse, Gangi, Anthony at yahoo.com. Make a recommendation. But again, we make the recommendation. I love when people are motivated by giving the victim a name. And then also, what have we missed so we can maybe create change on a greater scale. One thing I want to mention before I go is I was watching, and I mentioned it 2 shows ago, Kathy Kleiner was one of the victims that survived Ted Bundy, and she said something that was powerful. I thought she did. She said that, she wants to be remembered for more than just being a victim of Bundy's.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what we do. Maybe, yes, Celeste is a victim of a crime, or Emmanuel Harrow is a victim of a crime, but they could create change by what we do here that could give them recognition as opposed to always tying them to the person who took them from us.
Yeah. And we see that with things like the Amber Alert, where we take a tragedy and, they use it for the greater good, which is by educating and things that we're doing here. We're trying to educate and help people avoid some of these problems.
You only need one person to listen sometimes.
Yeah. That's what I say every time I write a book. I just wanted to help one person.
Oh, it's helped many, though. And that's a great point because, it's funny. Even when you just journal, you'll find out that you're not the only person that's going through those concerns. When I wrote one of my correction books, The How to Succeed, and it was just basically from my journals. And then to find out that people relate to it, I was like, you know what? Then what am I doing? Let's publish it, because maybe I'm not the only one.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that we all have in common.
Excuse me, sneezed. But as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon. And I'll reach out to you, Denise, hopefully later in the week for another show.
That's great. Thank you.
Take care.